It's already filming. Okay, maybe it'll sit there. Okay, we'll hope for the best. Okay, we're going to go ahead and be looking at page 88 in our textbook. So raise your hand if you think you know who we're going to be talking about today. Yes, Aiden.
The Indian.
No.
Jefferson.
I mean, it's right there on the top of page 88. Honesty?
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark. Very good. We're going to be talking about Lewis and Clark. All right, so yesterday we talked about what part of the country? Does anybody remember what we purchased from France? Say, you got it. Louisiana. It was the Louisiana Purchase, and yes, New Orleans. Remember, Jefferson wanted to buy New Orleans, and he was going to buy it from the French, so he set it all up so it would all work out. And the French were like, actually, if you really would like it, you can have all of Louisiana, which is really great for our country because now we're able to expand west, and we're able to have more farmland. We've got this trade route on the Mississippi River. We have this port city with New Orleans. So it's a really big move for us. But, excuse me, but the Louisiana Purchase also gave us a lot of land that we didn't know anything about, okay? And we can't know anything about this land until we go exploring on this land to make sure that it's safe and to see what kind of climate it is and to see what kind of farming we can do. So we needed to have an expedition. So the Louisiana Purchase gave the United States a large amount of land. Jefferson wanted to send men to explore it and find out more about the Louisiana territory. If you look there on page 88, you'll see your first bold word is expedition. Everyone say expedition.
Expedition.
An expedition is a long trip to explore an unknown area. Jefferson picked Meriwether Lewis. Everyone say Meriwether Lewis.
Meriwether Lewis.
And William Clark. Say William Clark.
William Clark.
We will call them Lewis and Clark when we discuss them. They led the expedition. Lewis knew a lot about the Indians and about the way that they did things and how they liked to live and all of that. Clark was a soldier, so he knew how to lead people. Do you think they would make a good team?
Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely do, because you have one that knows about the Indians and their culture and how they live. You have one who's a really good leader, so you put them together, and I think we're going to have a pretty good expedition here. Jefferson was interested in science and discovery, and he told Lewis and Clark to take careful notes. He told them to draw different plants and animals they saw. He wanted them to have friendly meetings with Indians. Lewis and Clark were to learn about the Indian way of life. Jefferson also had another reason for the Lewis and Clark expedition. He wanted to know what was past the Louisiana territory. Like I already said, he wanted to know what's out there. We don't know. We got to go explore it. There was more land that went all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. The United States might be able to claim that land. So past where we bought the Louisiana Purchase, there's even more land way out to the next ocean. And Thomas Jefferson's thinking, if we can keep expanding, we might be able to claim some more land. So, where did it go? Where did it go? Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Because I am on the wrong page. Sorry, guys. Look over at page 89. All right. In the spring of 1804, Lewis and Clark left the city of St. Louis. They traveled up the Missouri River, and there were about 40 men in their group. Clark's personal slave, York, went with them. York was the first black person that the Indians met. York was an important member of the expedition. He was skilled in hunting and scouting. The group traveled through lands where trappers and traders had already been. Then the group moved into lands where Americans had not been before. People who spoke the Indian languages helped the men in their expedition talk to the Indians. And if you look down at the bottom of page 89, you'll see a picture there. This is a painting of Lewis and Clark at Three Forks. And you can look at that there for a second. So Lewis and Clark, they hired hunters, they hired guides, they hired soldiers, all to be a part of their expedition. Do you think just two guys were going to be able to go explore all this land that they didn't know anything about?
No.
Absolutely not. They needed a group. They needed people that had lots of different skills that were going to help them in getting to where they needed to be. The expedition took place many years ago. However, Lewis, Clark, and others wrote their adventures in journals, and the diaries have been combined in the Journals of the Lewis and Clark Expedition, which is a book that's all of the journal entries from everything that they saw while they were out there. So let's look over to page 275. Not 275. It's 90. I eventually we'll look at 275. There's some excerpts from their journals. And it just talks about where they go, what they do, who they meet, that kind of stuff. But we're going to look at page 90. By winter, the group reached what is now called North Dakota. Lewis and Clark sent some of the men home to report their discoveries, and the others built a fort to live in during winter. In the spring, the group set out again. And the reason they had to do this was because the winters were very rough and very tough. It was much harder to continue their expedition in the winter months. So they wanted to find a place to call home. They could report some of their discoveries. So they built a fort to live in during the winter so they could get out of the elements. And then once spring arrived and the weather got better, they could get back and they could start exploring again. They were joined this time by an Indian named Sacagawea, her husband, and their baby. Sacagawea spoke an Indian language and her husband could translate it to the group. The couple helped the group talk to other Indians along the way. Being able to talk to Indian tribes gave the group a great chance with them. So you guys have to think about it like this. If I speak English and Liam speaks Spanish, and I don't speak any Spanish and he doesn't speak any English, are we going to be able to talk to each other? No. So if we're trying to communicate and we're trying to come up with a plan, are we going to be able to come up with a plan very easily? No, because we don't speak the same language. So having someone that could translate these Indian languages for our explorers is going to make their life a lot easier because it's going to help them be able to communicate. Soon the group crossed over the Rocky Mountains, and this was the hardest part of the journey. The group traveled down 2 different rivers, and they traveled all the way to the Pacific Ocean. These explorers were the first Americans to cross the entire North American continent. So they literally started in St. Louis, Missouri, which is all the way over. It's not in the east, it's more Midwest, but still, it's very far east. They even crossed over the Rocky Mountains, and that was a very treacherous trip for them, becoming the first Americans to make it to the other coast. So you're gonna think about, we have the Atlantic Ocean over here at Jax Beach. So think about the ocean all the way across the country in California, totally different ocean. And they were able to have sent our country on an exploring mission, starting all the way over here at the Atlantic Ocean, all the way over to the Pacific Ocean. Afterward, they returned to St. Louis. Flip over to page 90, or not flip, sorry, you're there. They returned to St. Louis. The expedition had taken 2 years and 4 months. Lewis and Clark kept journals of all the plants and animals they had discovered. The journals show that the men had discovered, listen to this, they discovered 178 new plants and 122 different animals. So you have to think about stuff that's right outside of what we see here in Florida or stuff we even see here on the East Coast. As they began to explore further and further over, they came across different regions and climates and types of weather. So they just started to see all of these different plants and animals. So the purpose of their expedition was to find out more about the Louisiana Territory, and then also Jefferson wanted them to have those friendly meetings with the Indians to try to have good relationships with them and eventually make it all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So we are going to do a little activity in our workbook. Open up your workbook to page 50. Looks like this. It's got a little word web. It says food in the middle, okay? So think about this. What food do you take on a long trip? Lewis and Clark were gone for over 2 years, and there were not many places to restock their supplies. They had to plan what food and supplies to take. During their journey, the men needed to know what plants and animals were safe to eat, because if you're out in the wilderness, you can't just pick up a plant and eat it. It might be poisonous. So they had to figure out what was poisonous and what wasn't poisonous. So we're going to complete this little web together as a class. In the middle, our web says food. Okay. Up above it, it says, how do you get food today? And we're going to talk about that. Please don't interrupt. We're on page 50, Tyler. Okay? So we got some little options. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 ways that we need to come up with how we get food today. Raise your hand, someone tell me, how do we get food today? Honesty?
Go to store.
Yeah, we can go to a store.
Just put store anywhere you want.
Yeah, and any of them is fine. I'm just gonna put it on that one. Tyler, do your makeup work from yesterday? It's on that packet then. Did Miss Blosser give you your makeup work? Okay, get that makeup work out. It's in the packet that she should have given you. Okay, how else can we get food today? Nathan?
Hunt.
We can hunt for our food, but it's not quite what I'm looking for because we don't have to hunt for our food, put it that way. Some people might want to hunt for their food, but we don't have to because we have other means of getting it.
We can pack our lunch.
We can pack our lunch, but we get that kind of stuff at the stores. How else do we get food now?
Roman stuff.
Like farming, gardening, and farming. Very good. That is one of them. So we'll say farming. Well, yeah, because that's how we get produce and all sorts of stuff. We'll say farming, and we'll say gardening. Because farming can also include things like dairy and the meat that we eat, like bacon from pigs and ground beef with hamburgers from cows. How else do we go out and get food now, Rihanna?
Fishing.
Again, it kind of goes along with hunting. We don't have to fish for our food anymore. We can go to the grocery store and buy some. How many of you guys like to go out and get food with your family? How many of you like to go to a restaurant? Anybody like to go to a restaurant? I love to go to a restaurant. I like to go get Mexican food with my family. So that's another way that we can get food, guys. We can get food from restaurants.
Nachos for Mexican places.
We can get food from restaurants. And the last one I'm looking for, I'm not going to make you guys guess for it. It's just in the book. It's kind of similar to stores, but like markets. Like a farmer's market. Haven't any of you ever been to a farmer's market before? It's where all the stalls are set up and there's fruits and veggies and all sorts of fun stuff. So like a farmer's market is another way because we've got farmers and gardeners who they grow all of their food and then they'll take it to these markets and they'll sell it to us. So farmer's market is another way we can get food now. That's how we do it today in this day and age. Is this making you hungrier?
Oh, I can't wait to go home.
So, of course, we're going to compare this to the explorers on the Lewis and Clark expedition. It's like we said, they were gone for 2 years. So they had to plan very carefully. They, of course, could bring supplies, but their supplies weren't going to last them 2 years. So they had to learn how to get food out in the wild. What do you think some wild meats they could get would be? No? Not moose, but something maybe a little different than that, Liam. Wild meat. What kind of meats do you think they found out in the wilderness?
The donkey found
Maybe, but that's not quite what I'm like. But like I mean, like wild meat, like wild out in the open.
what about cow?
No, I already said cow. Aiden?
Bear.
Bear is a good one. Yes. So one of the wild meats that they could have gotten might be.
Beer? Oh, I think it makes sausage.
I don't know. I've never had bear sausage before.
Wait, beer sausage doesn't come from bears?
No, we don't eat bears.
When I see a bear, I'm slapping you. You're supposed to give me sausage.
I don't
What
think.
about that chicken?
I don't think bears give us sausage. What else, Nathan? No, wild. Think wild, Liam. What are you doing? Sit down. Tyler?
Deer.
Not really quite what I'm looking for. We got think more wild than that. Rihanna?
Lion.
What is it?
Lion.
No, we're not out in the savannah. Johnny?
A bird.
Birds, yes, absolutely. Birds could be a wild meat.
What?
Please stop interrupting and talking in between questions. Y'all know better. What's another one? What about think about critters, little critters. We're gonna stick away from like the elks and the deer. They didn't really find those out there. What did you say, Johnny?
Rats.
No, not rats.
No. Chinese people.
We said birds.
What about toad? It's good.
Think about little critters, little hopping
Chinese
critters.
rats.
Think about little hopping critters. Start saying some stuff.
Bunny.
Rabbit.
Frog.
Why are we talking? You can't hear if you're talking. Think about old critters that like to climb up into the trees.
Lizards.
No.
Monkeys. Squirrels.
Lord, yes, squirrels.
Just scream at you last year, but
I don't think that's how you spell squirrels. What about? Hold on. Somebody said it earlier. I think Rihanna said something about
lion. Wait, fish.
fish. That's something that they could have gotten out in the wild. Think like big animal. No, we're not out in the wild savannah.
It's the
What?
FBI. I know it's I know what it is, but it's
I told y'all not to do that yesterday.
period.
Lord of mercy. What were you saying? Any of y'all ever heard about buffalo?
Oh,
Buffalo would be a wild meat for good to eat.
I ate that yesterday. Big buffalo.
3, 2, 1, quiet. Thank you. Y'all don't need to talk in between every question. If I have to say it again, I'm going to start writing names down. I don't want to do it. They also could have hunted, but they also could have found some wild plants. What do you think some plants that they found out in the wild might be?
Ooh.
Plants. We're on plants now.
I know.
No. Think about wild. Or they didn't have crops. This was out in the wild.
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms is a good one. Yes, very good.
Mushrooms.
Think about stuff that grows wild, not just stuff that you can plant, but things that grow wild.
The outside there's milk, where the milk and the plants were the
No, we're talking about plants, Morgan.
blackberries.
Yes, berries. Excellent job.
There is milk in plants.
Why are we talking in between questions again? It's not appreciated. What else? Aiden?
Fly trap. Fly trap.
No, that's not a wild plant that you can eat.
Leaves.
Leaves? You can. Some leaves are edible. And if you've been out on an exploration for 2 years and you're getting hungry, you might start eating leaves. What about the things that connect the plants into the ground? What are those called? You could eat roots. Yes. Okay. Final warning. The next person that talks When I'm in the middle of teaching, I'm leaving a note for Miss Glatzer. Yes.
When I was in my backyard, my grandpa took a big chunk of root and ate it, and he was like, it's good.
Some root is edible. Shh. Stop. So go ahead and finish this off. Get this all put together and done, and then look at page 51 in your book.